Hello.
Yeah, go.
Welcome back. Well, sorry about that. We had a little bit of a glitch on the internet, but with virtual applause, please welcome His Worship, Mayor John Iveson, Mayor of Edmonton.
Well, thanks, Fawn, and thank you also to the organizers for the opportunity to speak to you today, along with some of these distinguished panelists, including my fellow big city mayors Bowman and McCallum. You know, it's been 11 months since we and really the world have had to switch the very way we connect and communicate with each other. And Technicity West is another great example of how we've had to pivot to these remote COVID-friendly conferences. And there's also no doubt that the pandemic's effects have extended to how municipal services are delivered to citizens and how citizens interact with their governments. In many ways, the last year has challenged our traditional approaches to city building, and it's also tested the financial fragility of local governments too. But the pandemic has also presented some fantastic opportunities and even some imperatives to get creative and to innovate. As well, it's also forced us to think again about the citizen-centric open government work that for us was underway prior to COVID-19 and new and interesting ways of applying that open government spirit to meet Edmontonians' demands and serve their goals for our city. Now, for many years, Edmonton has been building a name for itself in the world of open data and the use of transparent, data-driven decision-making. In fact, we're considered a leader in Canada and North America on this front. And not only do we strive to use data to guide internal decision-making, we also make significant city data open to our public because we recognize there's tremendous value in the perspectives and expertise and even oversight of private citizens, researchers, and organizations. Now, an example of how Edmontonians have come to use that data include regular hackathons that we host in collaboration with the Edmonton Public Library. And one of the most recent of these had the theme of climate change and saw hackers, developers, designers, statisticians, and anyone with an interest in open data come together to network, learn, and create using that civic data. And our commitment to using technology and data to better serve our residents also extends into city operations. Whether we're tracking the percentage of transit services that are on time or monitoring the speed of the building and development permit approval process, we use this data that we collect to adjust our processes and improve citizens' experiences. And this is true not only in the services that we provide every day to Edmontonians, but also in our broader efforts to build a resilient and prosperous city for future generations. For example, we're using data and taking a scientific approach to this pressing issue of climate change. And during the pandemic, for example, we tracked our staff working from home and were able to determine and model how much greenhouse gas they'd avoided emitting by not commuting. And we then extrapolated that data and used those findings to talk with our citizens about the impact that everyone's commute has on our community's carbon footprint. And at the macro, we've also been monitoring our community and corporate greenhouse gas emissions all the way back to the 90s. And pleased to tell you that our 2019 emissions results showed a 5.6% reduction in overall emissions and a 26% reduction in energy use, which are really encouraging numbers. And this is a space where there is so much room for innovation in meeting the climate imperative. Now, fortunately, cities are not doing this kind of work alone. We have a robust working relationship with private and not-for-profit sectors and regularly pursue partnerships that leverage established know-how and ingenuity that others bring to the table. So when we sought to use solar data to provide homeowners with the tools they need to make better investment decisions to tackle climate change, we partnered with Naheed, an Alberta company, and with the folks at Google Earth as well, to make a publicly available map showing the solar potential of nearly every rooftop in Edmonton, helping building owners understand their solar potential and the environmental and financial benefits they might expect. Edmonton was the first municipality in Canada to partner up on this new rooftop solar potential platform. And this map, along with our solar rebate program, helps more Edmontonians not only understand solar energy, but get to installing it on their homes and achieving the benefits. In fact, our recent data shows that even during all the stresses of 2020, we saw an increase in the installation of these solar panels. But now across every industry, these are truly disruptive times. And with that, though, comes economic opportunity, particularly for innovators. And every dollar we invest in innovation and collaboration with our external partners pays off manyfold, not just for Edmontonians, but for Albertans and for our fellow Canadians. Because every dollar we invest in innovation encourages job creation, which spurs the attraction of talent, which in turn encourages greater private investment, and so on and so on. And cities are where all this potential comes together. So as one of the youngest and up until recently one of the fastest growing cities in Canada, innovation plays a crucial role in shaping a diverse, resilient, and creative economy here in Edmonton. And that's why we've recently repositioned the city's suite of innovation and entrepreneur supports under one new agency called Innovate Edmonton. Now, Innovate's function as the city's startup and venture catalyst hub for our city's innovation economy. It does this by providing concierge support to Edmonton's entrepreneurs, businesses, universities, and cultural organizations to help them and our innovation economy grow. And it also helps position Edmonton more strongly on the global stage in this area. Now, this is not new territory for us. Edmontonians have always been innovators and problem solvers. From Dr. Michael Houghton's recent Nobel Prize in virology to having the largest number of net zero homes in the country, to our history in pioneering natural resources extraction here in the north in new and innovative ways. And now we're using our technological expertise and that problem-solving capacity and energy to find more economically efficient and environmentally responsible ways to power our province and our country. Building off successes in the value-added processing in Alberta's industrial heartland, we're now working to position ourselves as Canada's first hydrogen hub. And we're doing this by using the existing technological knowledge and skill sets of Albertans and working to attract new investment to our natural gas sector through our hydrogen work, which will in turn create jobs, achieve environmental objectives, and help restore and grow Alberta's struggling economy. Now, most people likely think of Edmonton as the heart of the energy industry of the North, but a lesser known fact is that the strength of our education ecosystem is just as significant here. From an internationally respected primary education system, where my kids go, to an internationally recognized post-secondary set of 8 different institutions. So we are key to producing the talent that the changing economy needs and the research and innovation to help drive success. And just to give you one example, the University of Alberta is an internationally recognized leader in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it's one of the world's largest and leading AI research shops. Google's DeepMind opens its first satellite research lab outside of the United Kingdom here in Edmonton. And it's a testament to that unique hybrid of academia and startup culture and entrepreneurship that runs rampant here in our city. And it can be seen in other companies which call our city home, including the gaming company BioWare that was built here and acquired by EA, and the award-winning and very fast-growing tech company Jobber. Now, despite all of that AI and tech success in the past, we've still found that many young and talented Edmontonians took what they learned in some of our classrooms and moved on to other bigger cities to apply their skills, chasing a kind of big city experience that in the past was harder to find here in Edmonton. So when I became mayor 8 years ago, I worked hard on ensuring that we were working on keeping young and talented graduates here in our city, and we did that by working with active citizens, community builders and entrepreneurs, public servants, and several strong city councils to grow in Edmonton that was a more exciting and innovative place to work and to live and to build something. Rebooting our support for our innovation and tech sectors and partnering with our neighbors in the region more effectively through Edmonton Global, our investment attraction agency, has also been all key to this work. And it's clear that our ability to innovate by embracing technology will have a significant impact on our city's success. It has in the past, and it will in the future, especially to our ability to recover post-pandemic. So thank you for taking the time to listen to how Edmonton is embracing technology to improve the lives of Edmontonians, and best of luck with the panel. Back to you, Fawn.
Thank you for that, Mayor Iveson. Well, when it comes to the public sector, there are no more timely topics than the changing expectations of citizens. Canadians rely heavily on government services and information for their economic and personal well-being. As commercial enterprises embrace technology to create an invitingly simple customer experience, citizens are pushing to interact with their governments in the same seamless fashion. That's a tough row to hoe for cash-strapped organizations with cultures built on the status quo. But the pandemic has changed that. Organizations that once thought the remote delivery of service was impossible are now believers. And as technology has become more user-friendly, data has become more actionable. Well, here to set the table for the panel discussion about the changing citizen experience is Winnipeg Mayor Brian Bowman. Mayor Bowman is a passionate leader who works hard to make Winnipeg a better place to live. Take it away, Mayor Bowman.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Innovation and technology are increasingly a focus for cities around the world. I've always seen and continuously promoted the opportunities that innovation and technology can offer any government. When I was first elected mayor back in 2014, I really wanted to make sure as an organization we were looking for opportunities to innovate our ways of thinking and utilize technology as best we could. This is because I knew it would create opportunities to be more efficient and provide better information and better service to our residents. As Winnipeg grows, we continue to examine ways technology and innovation can drive change, improve citizen experience, reduce costs, and be more transparent by making information more open and accessible. Over the last number of years, we've been working to harness technology to make civic government more user-friendly and accessible. And in my opinion, I think provincial and federal governments would be well served to look to and learn from many of the innovations being made by municipalities across this country. I strongly believe cities are leading in the area of innovative government. As part of these opening remarks for this session of Technicity West, I chose to highlight some of the successes at the City of Winnipeg to start your conversation. I want to start with some policy. I was very pleased that in 2017, our City Council voted in support of Winnipeg's first open government policy. This primary objective of this policy intends to provide a framework for the public service to move towards being more open, transparent, and accountable. And as a result, we're proactively releasing more information on our website than ever before, from employee contracts of our CAO and internal auditor to monthly reports on every capital expenditure. And we've created a culture more focused on proactive disclosure of all kinds of information and measurements to better engage with our residents. And data not just in the form of reports, open and accessible data sets that can be incorporated into third-party applications via application programmer interfaces or APIs, or analyzed with spreadsheet tools. Under the city's new open government policy, we're continually finding new ways to use technology to increase openness and transparency, as well as share more open data. Greater openness and transparency creates greater citizen participation because having a starting point of shared and agreed upon facts help create a starting point for debate and conversation. And because of our focused effort to be a leader in openness and transparency, in just 4 years, Winnipeg has seen a dramatic rise in rankings on the Open Cities Index from 20th in 2015 to 2nd in 2019. While it's always comforting to get affirmation on the job we're doing, I don't envision a time when we'll be able to say this job is complete. That's why we continue to build on our past successes and push for innovations which seek to make Winnipeg a leader in Canada. Technology and innovation, they're the fuel for growth in the new economy, and innovation is what creates efficiencies for cities around the world. One of the first priorities I promoted in my first municipal budget was to create a transportation management center to better manage traffic flows. With council's support, the creation of our transportation management center was funded and opened in 2017 and was a leading example in North America on how innovation, thinking, and technology can help build a city for the future. Combining data provided by residents through the Waze app and 311, our 24/7 customer service portal, the Transportation Management Center is connected to all 671 signalized intersections across the city and can remotely respond in real time to traffic signal malfunctions and unexpected traffic incidents to improve traffic flow and forward that data in real time to Waze users while they make their commutes. Many were shocked to learn that we did it in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost of other cities' traffic management centers. And we did that in large part out of necessity. We didn't have the funds for a dedicated optical fiber network, so we networked our cameras over a cellular network, an innovation in North America when we did it. And what's exciting about it is this technology has opened windows into many new possibilities. An interesting initiative the City of Winnipeg is already engaged in has utilized this network of our cameras to study near-miss incidents at intersections with the goal of designing better and safer intersections. Another opportunity that has already been implemented is helping identify potholes for repairs either through crowdsourced data or, if it's a particularly large one, visual confirmation using the TMC camera network. The ability to have a fully functioning video network has many other potential uses. One is having snow accumulation sensors distributed around the city that can check on how much snow has fallen and assist the city in prioritizing snow clearing efforts on streets and active transportation networks, including sidewalks. Another is for remotely monitoring water levels. And another one is for remotely monitoring the progress of construction sites. We're also partnering with a local research team who's using near-miss events that weren't actually accidents to help design better ways of designing our intersections. The opportunities, I think, could be limitless, but as a former privacy lawyer, I start to think as a former privacy lawyer. There are real privacy concerns that need to be sorted out, and if there's one tip I have for you is to take a privacy by design approach with any of this kind of technology. Another city service that has been getting some extra attention with new technology is Winnipeg Transit. I'll start with our reloadable electronic PEGO cards for electronic fare payment on Winnipeg Transit. Electronic payment systems for transit were part of the pre-COVID-19 world for convenience. Who knew the use of a tap function to pay fares would become so much more relevant today as part of a healthcare solution to help avoid the handling of money? Another innovation that has demonstrated a pandemic application is the use of shields for drivers on transit buses. While they were put in as a mechanism for greater physical safety for bus operators, we've also determined these shields can act as an added layer of virus protection, which turn out to function just like the shields we see in our grocery store checkout lines. The movement of goods and the movement of people in cities is an increasing focus area for municipal governments, whether we're looking at how to adapt to a new gig economies like vehicle for hire or innovations in food delivery, or trying to provide the best transit service possible when public transit is so often heavily subsidized by property taxes. Thinking about transportation in all of its forms as a core service of municipalities and from the citizen's perspective, it brings forward ideas like on-demand transit service. To unpack the idea of transit on demand for a moment, I want to highlight why this is so incredibly important. One thing that bothers me, both as mayor and as a taxpayer, is seeing empty or near empty buses driving through our city. It's costly, it's wasteful, it's not great for the environment. There is a need to be more dynamic in our service delivery so that we're focused more on when and where riders need service rather than a fixed route design. This is another idea that came before the pandemic that has benefits that are clearly relevant in the world we're living in right now. The biggest source of losses we've experienced as a result of the pandemic is due to Winnipeg Transit. But as a transportation service that people depend on, it's one of many essential services provided by the city. Along with every other transit service in Canada, the dynamic effects of pandemic-related restrictions on Canadians have created significant challenges and losses for transit operations. A fundamental problem that all transit services grapple with is how to supply the most accurate service to meet the unpredictable changes in demand. This problem has been amplified during the pandemic, and part of the solution is to be more responsive to transit rider requests for service. On request or on-demand service delivery will use technology to allow riders to request transit service and have it delivered to them in a much more targeted way than the fixed route design. It's also been piloted or deployed in Canadian cities like Edmonton, Sault Ste. Marie, Stratford, Regina, and Saskatoon. And while outcomes will vary, the common theme being observed is increased service efficiency and decreased wait times for riders. I'm very proud of the work being done by our Innovation, Transformation, and Technology Department. They're working in collaboration with Winnipeg Transit on this, and I think it has the potential to be transformational. One innovation that has been talked about but never implemented was the ability to have virtual meetings of council and committees. One of the first things I did when I was elected was ensure we have all of these meetings live streamed. And while live streaming were a good start, there wasn't a way to have remote interactions. As new public health orders came in that restricted the size of gatherings, suddenly we were in a position where we had to find ways to continue the work of government while adhering to new restrictions. I have to give a lot of credit to our city clerks for their work under tight timelines to get it up and running, and we now have the ability to have councillors and delegations join meetings of committees and council remotely. And while we're still in the midst of restrictions of gathering sizes, I believe this will be a function of committees and councils long after the pandemic has appeared in our rearview mirror. The public health restrictions also prevented us from gathering with media to have press conferences, so that got the virtual treatment as well. I'd like to close by filling you in on an initiative that's currently the subject of discussion at City Hall, electronic voting. Many large cities in Canada already have e-voting, including Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Currently, we use the antiquated method of yay or nay, and for recorded votes, the method of standing to be recorded. Hitting a button would not only be easier, but it also clarifies for committee members and the public which item is being voted on and allows council and the public to transparently see the outcome of each vote. More importantly, it creates a voting record that can hold elected members of council to account. At the end of the day, what are we doing at council if we can't be held accountable for how we vote? I believe this will be a positive step forward for openness and transparency, while at the same time utilizing advances in technology to make it happen. In a nutshell, this has been the driving motivation behind my efforts to harness the value of innovation and technology. Innovation and technology, they help make things easier and oftentimes cheaper while providing open, accountable, and transparent government. And I think that's something we can all get behind. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. Merci and miigwech. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Well, there were a lot of points there for our panel to explore and lots of material to raise at the town hall. If you have questions, don't forget to use hashtag Technicity to get them in the messenger box on the platform. So just before we get to the panel, I want to show you the first of 4 Leading the Charge mini profiles of public sector fueled innovative initiatives rooted in Western Canada. Appropriately, given Mayor Bowman's presentation, we start in Winnipeg, where thanks to some innovative use of technology, the victims of B&Es no longer have to wait hours or days for the police to show up and investigate. Please roll the video.
The Winnipeg Police Service decided to bet big on digital transformation to improve its response times to break-and-enters. The concept of virtual police reports might have been scoffed at years ago, according to Constable Richie Miller. Taking what is traditionally a highly manual process and automating parts of it required a lot of convincing internally, but the results eventually spoke for themselves.
Virtual policing is so unique, certainly nationally in North America and potentially in the world. We did face some struggles both internally and externally to get buy-in from people with the concept. What we have found is that once we were able to establish our workstations, start taking these calls, and there's been a culture shift both within our service and externally, and we think that people see the value.
Here's exactly how the Virtual Police Response Program works. Break-and-enter victims connect to a police officer through a video chat and file a report. With the consent of a homeowner or business owner, an officer can assess the damage, catalog stolen items, and write the initial report. Police then decide whether more police resources, forensic or investigative officers, are required. Today, the program also allows people to report assaults and robberies. The program was tested with a pair of online video platforms, FaceTime and Google Duo. Even though the frequency of dispatches hasn't changed, Constable Miller says the department has been way more efficient with its resources.
We've taken 600 reports through our virtual police response. 66% of these have been on FaceTime. That's 398, as opposed to 202, which we did through Android devices. We experience the same results, whether we're using FaceTime or Google Duo. These reports are usually completed within 20 to 25 minutes.
Citizens are more comfortable using technology, and police departments are rapidly innovating despite previous fears about digital transformation.
I believe those fears were really internal for ourselves. There's been very positive feedback, and I think it's partly because of the approach we take. We look into our queue, which is where our calls wait. We identify calls that are suitable, and we contact our citizens or our customers by phone. We explain the delay, we want to get to these calls, and then we explain the process of virtual police reporting. But what we do is we give the people the ability to offboard themselves. If this isn't something for them, they're able to step away from it. And I think that's probably why we haven't heard these concerns, because those people who have those choose a different reporting option. So it's a very efficient reporting method for our customers, certainly efficient for us in that our officers can stay on site. We don't experience any cost related to fleet and fleet maintenance and things like that. And so I really think we're moving in the right direction.
Great work, Winnipeg. Well, I wonder how many other departments can adopt that model to help solve some of their B&E backlogs. And now, on to the first panel. Here is our very own editorial director, Alex Coop, as he takes the panel of leaders through an exploration of the challenges associated with changing the citizen experience. Alex?
Thank you very much, Fawn. Just a few minutes ago, we heard from Edmonton Mayor Don Iveson, talking at a high level about how technology was driving innovation and changing the citizen experience. Now, in this first panel of Technicity West, we've assembled a panel of experts to take a deeper dive into that second part, the changing citizen experience. So let's get started by asking the panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Catherine Chick, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at the City of Vancouver.
We also have some representation from Calgary. Jan, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, happy to. Glad to be part of the panel today. My name is Jan Bradley. I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer for the City of Calgary.
And more talent from out west. Helen, could you also please introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Helen Weatherly Knight. I'm the founder of Helen Knight Consulting.
So I want to start off with a pretty broad, basic question, but how has the demand for services changed since last March? And if demand hasn't actually changed, just how have those services themselves changed in broad strokes? So Catherine, let's just start with you.
Well, I think as with most organizations, we definitely saw a spike in technology demand in the March-April timeframe as we shifted workers home. The citizens obviously had a lot of concerns and questions that would flow into City Hall, and there were some increased call volume at that time for us to help support the provincial health measures that were in place for COVID. But in terms of services, most of the services either have had to shift online where there was capability to do that. Otherwise, they are still coming to City Hall in Vancouver on premise, but obviously with social distancing measures in place.
Recreation obviously has been significantly impacted because their provincial orders have restricted them. So they've had to be ready to shift to open when the provincial orders allow them and then to close again when they needed to. And so right now they're looking at a number of different ways that we might be able to reach out to citizens using technology to offer some of those services.
A lot of the work that I do is really about large-scale strategic enablement, and so many nonprofits that I've seen have purchased or used free or donated software and hardware and cobbled together a number of disparate, really inexpensive technologies, and they haven't had the opportunity or the investment, the financing to make really critical purchases into best of breed technology. I'm seeing a lot of really focused programs now and a greater understanding by nonprofits in how important technology is. So I believe I'm seeing a shift in terms of nonprofits beginning to understand that purchasing a number of different systems isn't nearly as cost effective as implementing a single CRM, entering data one time, receiving reports, everyone sharing the same content.
You need to be able to communicate with your citizens effectively. But during this transition to digital and just this acceleration of innovation, how have you actually communicated to citizens of these changes that are happening? So whether it's the openings and closings of services, for example, the library, communicating alternate options for them, just what are the tools and methods that you're using? Jane, I think we'll start with you.
Sure. We have a brilliant communications team, and they've used multiple channels to communicate with citizens. And, the communication has become really important because we were the vehicle for translating those provincial orders into how it impacted citizens and how they live. So, we did everything from putting signs in playgrounds to having the mayor recording videos on a regular basis, extensive use of social media, as many different ways of communicating with citizens as we could come up with, we did.
And Catherine, what about in Vancouver? How are those communication channels functioning now, and what do they look like?
I think similar story to Calgary. There has to be a very strong communication process internally between the communications team and the technology team, because the vast majority of communication is delivered through those digital channels at this time. Huge uptake in social media consumption. There were already many followers on those feeds, but now this is the primary method of communication. Obviously, the website. But then not to downplay the 311 line. So that citizen service line is really highly used. I'm always really amazed what type of volume of calls they still get, even though there's all of those digital channels. I think, especially during COVID, I feel like the in-person phone call was actually a bit of a lifeline for people to just get some personal connection and hear someone actually convey that information to them as a real person rather than having to read it.
And I've heard from so many organizations that the help desk, not only has the volume increased, but the length of call time. People are really enjoying reaching somebody to speak to in this time of need. And it's interesting that it's the help desk that they're reaching out to. I don't think it's ever played as critical a role in people's sanity before as it does right now.
A lot of that communication with citizens quite often happens during council meetings and committee meetings. And so my question is just, how has the digitization of the world and maybe you were making adjustments to how council meetings were being run before COVID, but especially now under the circumstances that we're in, how have those events, how has council meetings changed, committee meetings changed? And as a follow-up question, are you noticing more engagement from citizens because they can just hop on a computer and listen in? So Catherine, I think we'll just start with you.
For sure. It was a complete change. Council meetings used to be entirely in person with published minutes, I suppose. And now they are streamed through our conference platform. I do think that it gives more people the ability to kind of hop on and off. I've heard many people say that they have it running in the background while they're doing other things, and they'll kind of listen to the topics that they're interested in. So the accessibility is a little bit better. But again, with the earlier comments, accessibility for those who have access to internet services and a machine to view them on.
And Jan, what about in Calgary? How have those council meetings and committee meetings evolved over the past couple of years, and specifically over the past year?
I think probably one of the best examples is that in the summer, back in July, the council wanted to host an anti-racism forum. And so they invited the public to participate and share their stories. And so there was a small group of people who came into the council chambers, and, we kept them safe and we kept them physically separated, and they could speak in person. But that went on for 3 days. We had that many people wanting to participate and wanting to share their stories. and available to do it through virtual meetings. So I think it's actually working quite well.
And Helen, I know you're not working directly within a municipality, but I'm sure you've seen some of these service demands change, and I'm curious what you've heard from your clients and customers as all this shift towards a more digital service engagement has taken place. So just from your perspective, what are you seeing?
Sure. Well, I do technology consulting for Canadian nonprofit social services organizations, and there's really been a big chasm open up. There's so many more opportunities and excitement and engagement to use technology in new ways and break new ground and enable so many processes and systems that there hadn't been the appetite in the past. Yet at the same time, when libraries shut down and the access to free computers and technology has been limited for so many people, we've left a lot of people behind.
That access to internet and other online services that were often accessible via the library or some kind of physical infrastructure, now that's absent. So Catherine, I'll start with you again. Have you encountered that specific challenge, and what are the plans right now to overcome those?
We absolutely have, as with all municipalities, with the access to the computers in the libraries and the community centers, things where that were widely available to the public before, are no longer available. For those who don't have access to their own equipment, that's a huge cut in their lifeline for access to information, access to services. And so that's really made us rethink future planning for how those services will be delivered. In the meantime, from a short-term perspective, what we're doing is we usually do a recycling program for our used equipment, and we're trying to divert those to actually organizations with communities in need so that they have some at least temporary equipment to be able to use. But for future planning, we really have to look at that accessibility and the fact that I think prior to 2020, we just assumed that we would always have access to the buildings. But now, obviously, there has to be a secondary approach when the building access is not possible.
We have a group that looks after affordable housing as part of our municipal service delivery, and they reached out to us, and we connected them with some of our partners in the telecommunications industry, because people may have a phone or they may have a device, but they don't have access to sufficient internet to be able to actually use the services online. So we tried to make that connection to try and resolve that issue for some people, but it is an issue that many municipalities across the country are looking at. And there's some work that's happening now, sort of with some of the big 6 cities around what are we going to do and how do we potentially work with the federal government and our provincial governments to try and provide the infrastructure that communities like rural communities and even some of our own communities need to have regular and consistent access to internet.
I actually want to dig into the data that is being collected by municipalities. So, Catherine, I want to return to you for a moment. In Vancouver, I understand that some of the work to improve the city's services is anchored to GIS location-based data. So, tell us a bit more about how that decision came to be, and what does it mean for citizens ultimately? How is this technology going to improve their ability to engage with you?
Some of the innovations that have been done at the City of Vancouver are really in that GIS space. GIS has the traditional uses for mapping, but the innovation in GIS is really using that same technology to apply to mapping and presenting data around all of the city assets. So that would include buildings, manholes, trees. So what we've done is we've translated all of that data that we've input into that system into open data sets, and we've published those through our website, available for anyone really to download.
Okay. And Jan, how are you handling that data that's coming in, and what technology are you putting your bets on to help improve that citizen engagement experience?
One of the technologies that we're actively deploying right now is around the Internet of Things and trying to leverage that technology to enhance the citizen experience. So, for example, where we have festivals, whether it's the Stampede or it's a music festival, we deploy sound sensors through our Internet of Things network to try and monitor what the sound levels are in the communities that are nearby those festivals. And so we use that data to try and either deploy bylaw officers if we need to, or to adjust some of the messaging that we need to do with that community, or to work with the festival organizers. So that's one of the ways that we're deploying the technology. One of the things that we do when we deploy that technology is we work really closely with our access and privacy group, because we need to be very mindful of not collecting data with any of these sensors that could be personally identifiable.
Thank you so much to our panel of experts. That was a really great discussion. And I'm sure a lot of those points will come up for discussion at our live town hall event, which is coming up just a little later. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you everyone watching right now. And back to you, Fawn.
Thanks, panel. And now we are going to turn our attention to the next focus, which is digital enablement and innovation. So for an overview, we reached out to Roy Hart, CIO of the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Roy brings to the table a wealth of experience with 25 years in enterprise IT and leadership across many sectors, from education, health and justice, to social service and infrastructure. Before joining BCIT, Roy served as CIO with the Government of Alberta. Well, it's great to talk to you again, Roy. How are things in BC?
Oh, Don, it's nice to see you again, and it's wonderful to be here, part of this IT World event. Just want to say IT World has been a part of my life for my entire career. It goes back many, many years. You know, BC, I've been here about 3 years now, and it's fantastic. I encourage all my friends from Toronto to come out this way. I'm really enjoying it here, in particular at BCIT.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. You're going to have about 600 people show up at your doorstep next week. Anyway, I know you've been a CIO at BCIT for a couple of years now, and you've got 6 campuses and close to 50,000 students involved in applied education. What does that really mean, and what should our public sector audience know about it?
Well, key word here is applied. And while online learning has been part of our business for many years, our focus has been on in-person learning, of course. And, moving to entirely online is not practical for BCIT. Who would hire a tradesperson who never held a tool, So from a technology perspective, it means we operate and support technologies used in the majority of industry in BC. So it's quite amazing, really. We have everything from ship simulators, patient simulators, known as mannequins, commercial TV cameras, heavy equipment, welding shops, energy grids, industrial cybersecurity ranges. We do AI and coding. And of course, we have administrative systems, just to name a few. So we're a pretty busy place here at BCIT.
That's quite something. I can't wait to go, and maybe you'll give me a tour.
Happy to do so.
Okay, so Roy, I understand now you'll talk a bit about engagement and innovation in your area. So over to you.
Well, thank you, Don. So, first I'm going to start with, the basics of digital enablement, which, many of us have been through. At BCIT, the instructors, faculty, and staff have done an amazing job leveraging a wide array of resources to continue teaching and in many of your businesses to continue operating. Additionally, a host of new measures have been deployed to keep people safe for the essential hands-on learning. We've created video simulations, leveraged collaborative workspaces, and seen a significant surge in the use of our learning management system. So just to give some perspective on it, some metrics, if you will. BCIT delivers about 55% of our courses entirely remote. I know, speaking to my colleagues in the industry, Many of them are operating 100% remote. And about 45% of our instruction is in what we call hybrid mode. And we deliver this to, Don, as you mentioned early on, thousands of students across BC and indeed around the globe. And to give you an idea of the intensity and scale that we're operating at, we have 3 different video conferencing systems. We use WebEx, we use Bongo, which is specialized for learning environment. We also use Zoom. And some specifics about Zoom. So since the middle of March of last year, we've used 110 million minutes of Zoom time. That's an incredible amount of time. Almost 1.5 million participants in meetings and over 170,000 meetings. So if you're talking enablement, that is indeed enablement. We've also provided self-service access to over 400, many custom configured applications and virtual desktops. So that's just the enablement part of it. And I'm going to propose that some things are finally over. So limited room availability is done. There is no such thing now as a meeting room is not available. It's good and bad, of course, but it's a reality. I hope that time in the office as an indicator of productivity is dead. That is really quite outdated, has been, I think, since when my father was in the workforce. This is no longer something we should be focusing on. And perhaps a little tongue-in-cheek, I'm really hoping that paper and the fax machine are please done and over with. We're finished with those things. Let's move on. There's better ways to do things. What really gets me excited is the innovation that this whole scenario we're dealing with has spurred. 3 things, in my opinion, that are just beginning at scale. Something I like to call digitally enabled collaboration as a common business experience. We do digitally enable collaboration for sure, but as a common business experience, perhaps not. I think that's just beginning to happen at scale. The wonderful virtual conferences like we're seeing today, we're really just beginning that. And the potential is huge. The same for virtual learning. And finally, something that's common and in the news that we're really just beginning is work and study from anywhere. I read a recent article talking about, starting to get on with dealing with the policy and legal aspects of working from anywhere. So it's just beginning. For a moment, let's drill down on digitally enabled collaboration and talk about what that really means. So for BCIT, which is where I can speak from, we're accelerating innovation and collaboration. And we're doing it through digital transformation. Digital transformation has been part of our strategic plan. Fortunately, we had a new plan that we were able to just fine tune, really, based on our learnings from dealing with the pandemic. So our digital transformation will focus on learning opportunities, applied research, the campus experience, and of course, operational efficiencies. That's critical for all of us. So what we're going to do, and we've given it a name, and we're going to enable what we call the BCIT Smart Campus as a collaborative initiative that will usher in new ways of learning, working, and connecting across and beyond BCIT. This is particularly important for the BC economy. We have a wealth of connections into industry, and we provide a significant number of workers. For those in the audience who are from BC, or maybe even from our neighbor, Alberta, very likely you know somebody who has graduated from BCIT if you haven't done so yourself. So let me give an example of what this all means, and I'll illustrate it with the concept of something we call a living lab. So imagine this and follow this story. So Sam, an environmental engineering student, has partnered with her peers on an interdisciplinary project. Together, they're building a monitoring device to track salmon migration on Gishan Creek, which is a river that runs through our Burnaby campus. And they want to track the salmon migration in relation to ambient temperature and light. The first thing Sam does is she requests a working space with a 3D printer, a smart white wall capability, and the system then assigns her that location automatically, delivering a QR code to grant her access to that room, her and her teammates. The smartboard projector displays a topography of the creek, allowing Sam to draw additional features directly onto the wall and simultaneously updating the file for her project. Sam determines which data sensors they require, downloads the blueprints, and feeds them into the 3D printer. And of course, now we need to add the componentry. So Sam books time in the tool shop, a facility that allows her access to machinery and technical supports to build these sensors. Only a few days later, the students in her group install the sensors along the creek. The sensors track the salmon count and migration speed, while the system transmits temperature, direct sunlight, precipitation levels to a central database. Let's call that the campus information system. The students' analysis is publicly displayed and accessible on a designated website. So this is where it becomes powerful and the connections really grow. When the BC Ministry of Environment gets wind of the initiative, it grants the students access to monitoring stations along Gishon Creek up until the river's confluence with Still Creek and ultimately the Fraser River. So Sam and her team's living lab experience becomes powered by the BCIT Smart Campus. Now, imagine for a moment the contribution that skilled graduates like Sam will bring to the BC economy. Just imagine what a difference it will make. So back to the technology. The BCIT Smart Campus, and parallel this in your own environments. We'll take a platform approach, leveraging digital twin technology to drive innovation. This is all about driving innovation. We'll connect existing and new IoT devices. We've been talking about these things for years now. You know, we already have thousands on our Burnaby campus, 15 to 20,000 of them. We'll connect those. And we'll integrate all of these disparate systems from our building management systems, our 3D Revit models that come from our AutoCAD of our buildings, into a unified data model, supported by this digital twin, of course, and make that available to faculty, students, and researchers, and ultimately industry. And, you know, in my early day conversations with industry, I can't believe the excitement, the potential it brings. I've spoken with many of my colleagues, some of which are already pursuing digital twin technology for their own business. So it's truly an exciting time for all of us. It's an exciting time at BCIT. You know, it's an exciting time for all of my private sector colleagues and all of my public sector colleagues. We're dealing with some challenges. We are definitely moving past those challenges. You know, there is a new, brighter future for all of us. And Don, thank you so much for having me here today.
Loved your example, the iterative example of Sam, salmon, and students, smart. Anyway, lots for the panel to discuss here. In just a minute, we're going to hear from Naheed Hussain, VP of Vertical Programs for our sponsor, Ring Central. But first, we're going to share our second Leading the Charge video. This time we head to Saskatchewan, where a tool built to monitor athletic training is now in use by the Saskatchewan government. Really, it's quite a pivot. Watch and see.
What began as a simple tool to more efficiently evaluate student athletes is now catching the attention of global sports organizations and even provincial governments. Neil Anderson, CEO and founder of Saskatchewan-bred Skillshark, designed the customizable athlete evaluation program to reduce the headaches associated with manually writing down names, positions, scores, and times, then punching them into a computer later. On top of mindless data entry, there was little dialogue with athletes getting cut from a team, so they had little to go on when it came to trying to improve their skills.
The very first thing I did, I made what I refer to as the mother of all spreadsheets, where you could press a button on the spreadsheet and it would spit out a single-page PDF report card for every athlete. Now, Joe, user of Excel, probably isn't going to be able to do that kind of stuff, so I made this utility, and the assistant coaches that I had, their jaw kind of dropped and they said, wow, we have the same problem in hockey. So have you ever thought about making this an app? And that's kind of where it all stemmed from. So started 5 years ago, we came up with the first really early version of Skillshark, and yeah, it's taken off since then.
Some of Skillshark's latest partnerships and contracts are the biggest in the startup's history. But, as we mentioned at the beginning, it's not just the sports world that's been captivated by the Saskatchewan-made evaluation program. Skillshark is working with the Provincial Ministry of Highways and Infrastructure and the Public Service Commission to run the government's management and executive talent inventory process. It may shock you to know that several government offices do things manually and with paper. A lot of paper.
Because right now, as most companies do, they use Word documents where the employee fills out a Word document, the manager fills out a Word document, they compare notes in a meeting for 15 minutes, and then those sheets of paper get stapled together and filed away, never to be looked at again. So Skillshark makes the whole process very trackable. You can actually do something with the data.
The business world needs to be able to evaluate talent and plan for the future, just like the sporting world does, says Skillshark marketing manager Michelle Corey.
I mean, you have these multi-million-dollar organizations with, hundreds, sometimes thousands of employees. And if your management isn't effective, I mean, you could be losing a ton of money just from lack of development on the employee side.
This mighty startup is powered by 6 full-time and 4 part-time employees, but it's actively seeking new talent.
Great story. Well, if you know about other great innovation stories we should be profiling, please tweet them to us using hashtag Technicity, and you could be profiled at next year's conference. So without further ado, I will turn the podium over to our next guest, Naheed. So the virtual platform is now going over to Naheed, who has more than 20 years of global experience in technology. As a CIO in a number of other organizations, he knows the challenges faced by our audience very well. So please, take it away, Naheed.
My name is Naheed Hussain, Vice President for Verticals at Ring Central. Ring Central is excited to sponsor the Technicity West event. It's challenging and exhausting, but this is our time to change and come up with new ways to make our lives better. The panel that you're going to listen to today will talk about these changes and innovation. Although we won't be able to go into our offices today and whiteboard these ideas, there are great other ways for us to share this content through tools that Ring Central offers. We hope that we can remove the friction that you have between communicating and exchanging ideas with not only your constituency to support them, but beyond that, enabling also your staff to be able to think differently and to have tools available to them so that they can provide the outreach that's necessary. So without further ado, I would like to hand the floor over to Steve Proctor, who's going to moderate this panel.
Thanks, Naheed. That was great. I think our speakers have done a great job of setting the table for this panel discussion on enablement in the public sector and innovation. So I'm going to jump right into it with this great panel that we've assembled. So Thanks very much to the panel for joining us. I want you to introduce yourself, and I want you to talk a little bit how the rapid move to remote work has changed your organization internally. So why don't we start with Jamie?
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be joining you. My name's Jamie Boyd. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the Government of British Columbia. I'm joining you today from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, Southern Vancouver Island. As the Chief Digital Officer for the Government of BC, my mandate is essentially to accelerate digital change for the public sector across British Columbia in the service of the 5 million British Columbians that we support. In terms of the remote work question, it's been remarkable. We've seen more change in the last year than we've seen in decades, and we've really accelerated a lot of change. Previously, we had a snow day as our record for the number of remote workers, and there we had about 8,000 people connecting remotely. Today, we're enabling 35,000 public servants across BC to connect remotely on a daily basis. That's throughout COVID, it's been averaging around 28,000. So that's a lot of new connections. And it means that we've had to look at different ways of working, different ways of collaborating, different ways of empowering remote teams.
Wayne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how remote work has changed your world?
So my name is Wayne Karpoff. I'm the CEO of a company called Will Glen Systems that's based in Edmonton. We build technology and support technology that drives mission critical infrastructure, metro systems, the power systems, things like that have to stay up. So our challenge was a little bit different in that we switched into COVID mode and we had to make sure that some really important things didn't break or hospitals wouldn't have power or people wouldn't be able to get to where they needed to go. A big part of what we do is innovation and innovative research and development, collaboration with our customers. So we needed to be able to maintain that even though people couldn't look over cubicles. We needed to change the way we interacted with our customers, even though they're spread all over the world. We're deployed on 5 continents. It was an interesting thing not just to do our COVID plan, but to integrate it with everybody else's and adjust the culture accordingly.
I'm Michael Barr. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, or known as SAIT. We're the 3rd largest post-secondary institution in the province with about 18,000 full-time equivalent students. The rapid move to quarantined work was something that we had been planning for through business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. It wasn't without its challenges, of course, but we were able to light up our virtual private network VPN connections practically overnight, enabling about 5,000 simultaneous connections to support our staff and students. It was an exciting time last March, not to make light of all of the stresses that we've been going through. The biggest challenge has been on the social side. I'm sure we'll get to that later. But in terms of the impact to the school, the level, the volume, the pace, the urgency of communications has gone through the roof. And that's probably been the biggest impact.
Let me ask this question then, and we will get to the social in just a second, but what has surprised you about the move to remote work in terms of our ability to actually do that? Because there was lots of municipalities for years and governments who've said for years that they could never move to a remote work platform. It wasn't doable. And then pandemic and all of a sudden we're remote. So what has surprised you about the ability to actually do this?
The thing that was surprising was the clock speed. It's like someone just dialed up the clock. We've increased our speed by about 30%. So project throughput and that type of thing. It's just been an absolute crazy pace. It's like sprinting at the start of a race. You're sprinting and you're not pacing yourself. That was the thing that was surprising to me, was just the pace and the productivity really picked up.
I was pleasantly surprised at how well the underlying infrastructure Canada has was able to step up to that. You know, you would think with billions of Zoom calls suddenly hitting our internet backbones that it would come to our knees. A good friend of mine is a CTO of TELUS, who was telling me that surprisingly, the internet backbone did just fine. The cellular networks did just fine. The part that was actually struggling was actually traditional landlines. So that we did pretty good as a country that way.
You know, we always say that necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that we really saw that in the wake of COVID. A lot of times in the public sector, we have these long development cycles for digital products, right? We have to do all of our requirements gathering, and then we go to RFP, and it's a lengthy process. And we were seeing development cycles go down from months and months to weeks, if not days, right? And so the second thing that really jumped out to me, and it would be the level of cultural acceptance around remote work. For so long, we've been buying buildings, we've been creating these physical gathering points to try to create collaboration, try to break down silos. And I think for the first time, we sort of got rid of that assumption that it was the physical place that was limiting our collaboration. So it's actually really accelerated some of the cultural change that we would see and desire when it comes to digital government.
We've talked that there's a lot of fast change. We're breaking down silos, which also means people are spending more time on video. There's a lot more thing. We're getting into video fatigue. How do we support the people, the employees, the workers who are, in many cases becoming burned out? What are you doing to help in that regard right now? Because that is part of innovation and enablement. You have to have a workforce that's ready and set and excited.
As a card-carrying introvert, being like most computer scientists, I've been training my whole life for this pandemic, and it's not a big deal. But one thing I learned quite quickly in the pandemic is not all people are equal. Different people need different levels of social interaction and different, discourse. Otherwise, they start to fall apart. And we're seeing a lot of that. And so that brings up a big thrust that we've had is overemphasizing communication. The big challenge that we're seeing is finding clever ways to create that serendipitous sort of interactions that create the unplanned innovations and things like that. That's one of the things I think that as a technical community and as people that manage those technologies, we've got to do a better job on.
I think one of the really cool things for society is that we've become a lot more open and supportive about mental health issues. There's no longer the stigma. Part of my whole man cave kind of presentation here is just to be human, is just to say, hey, this is what I do. I like to travel around the world and run. I'm not that good, but I got some Christmas lights. It's kind of goofy, but it puts a smile on people's face. It's just a little bit of humanity. And one of the things that I've found is that by being invited into people's spaces, it's like, oh, you're more human. You have interests or whatever.
I love that, Michael. And that was going to be my first one, being really empathetic. I think as technologists, we are inherently optimistic. We work to build a brighter world. And right now, our society is going through this really challenging transformation. And as technologists, we have an opportunity to build a more beautiful version of our society, a more inclusive one that's more thoughtful. Working in the public sector, government exists to serve people. And so it's easy to make that connection to the mission-driven work. It's easy to say, listen, this is too important. Let's get rid of the distractions. Let's focus on creating a minimum viable bureaucracy, if you will, and really emphasize that. But I would suggest that this applies to people working in technology in all sectors. As technologists, we are optimists, and I'm so excited to get to work with really talented people across BC, across Canada, to get to deliver on the opportunities of better services for Canadians.
Well, I love that minimal viable bureaucracy. That's a great phrase.
I just wrote that down. I'm copying that. I'll attribute it to you, but that was awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So how do we build now? What is the next 5 months look like if we're trying to enable and innovate?
There's an immediate opportunity. If there's one bullet we could do, this would be it. And that is to transition to being a community of active early adopters of the technologies that our small companies across Canada are building right now. So if we could, retool ourselves in the way we look at in interacting with all these bright companies that Jamie's referring to do not early adopter, because that starts in an RFP, but active early adopters, which plays that mentoring role all the way through. Not only will we make better end user experiences for our needs, minister or things like that, but we'll create companies that are healthy and sustain that for a long time to come.
So I'll build on what Wayne just said. So we're doing exactly that. So our next 5 months is to really prime the pump in downtown Calgary, which has been really devastated by the shift in the economy. through the creation of our School of Advanced Digital Technology. My reality is I'm working on my roadmap out to 2025. I don't know about 80%, but probably 20, 30, 40% of my portfolio will be partnering with a lot of companies that are tiny, small, 2 to 5 people. And this is the beginning. This is sort of the little green shoots that are coming up in our economy, where we're starting to we're part of that ecosystem. Lots of exciting stuff. Tough times for sure, but I'm a patriotic Albertan. I believe that there's a ton of opportunity here that we can really put our minds to. So for the next 5 months, it's continuing to build that dialogue with a lot of my ecosystem partners.
For us in the government of BC, we're still in it. We're still in active emergency response. You look at the stats, and I think a lot of us are starting to say, "Oh yeah, COVID's that's a 2020 problem." No, like you look at the numbers, we are still in active emergency management, and I think that as technologists, we're continuing to make sure that our Ministry of Health and our health sector writ large are well supported in providing the supports that they need for British Columbians. At the same time, Steve, your question around the next 5 months, I think that we do have a great opportunity to look at trying to address some of the shortcomings that were revealed by the pandemic. I've just spent the last half an hour bragging about how wonderful we are. There were a bunch of shortcomings that I don't want to gloss over. Data management in the public sector is very challenging. Tell us once is not a thing that exists. We ask British Columbians to tell us things multiple times because we don't necessarily share information between our ministries, and there are lots of important reasons for doing that. A lot of them to do with privacy protections, but we really do need to get that sort of thing sorted out. I served a minister when I was with the Government of Canada that would always look at a big issue and say, don't waste a good crisis. And I think that's exactly where we're at right now. Are there certain things that we can push through that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise? In public policy, we talk about Overton's window, that window of possibility for public sector interventions. And I think that our Overton window is wider than it ever has been. So things like digital ID, which are, for me, the backbone of collaboration and trust. We've made good progress in BC. I would love to see us leverage this opportunity to strengthen pan-Canadian collaboration on things like that.
I think there's one question that I would like to ask is, can you share with the audience one piece of information, one piece of wisdom that will help them up their enablement and innovation game, that would help them clear their way forward? Is there anything you can share with them that has worked for you or that would help with their innovation? And
I'll jump in with sort of 2 quick things. So first of all, at the heart of innovation is risk taking, and having a culture where failure is tolerated and not encouraged but encouraged. And as public sector, that's a tough thing, because taxpayers don't want to hear about, we were experimenting and we had a failure in something. But you're not going to innovate if you don't take some chances. So are you supporting a culture of innovation? The second piece, kind of a bit of a pivot away a little bit, is that even though we are very much in a cloud-based world now, it's not even really a thing anymore. It is what it is. It's a utility. But you've now got this massive distributed ecosystem that you're part of. I don't have an easy answer for you, but it's a wake-up call of cybersecurity is now a very complicated thing. So third-party management, vendor management, if it's not a high priority item for you, it should be.
I think we need to take the advantage of this rapid shift, which has opened an opportunity for much more aspirational ways of looking at where we want to get to, not just in the next year or two, but over the next 5 years, and start taking our steps in that direction today. But in order to do that, we have to start thinking like entrepreneurs, even at a government level. And in order to do that, you start with where you want to get to and work backwards, not what's the next step in that direction. And so I think that's a big opportunity that comes out of the pandemic, is this opportunity for much more aspirational thinking in terms of how we're going to plan our next steps.
My number one tip for building innovation, particularly in the public sector and technology organizations, is trust your people. Would just empower your people, I have the incredible privilege of getting to do some of the most exciting work I've ever imagined. I'm a lowly economist. I was expecting to crunch numbers on most of my life, and instead I get to build digital services for communities I love. And I think that a lot of people get very excited by that kind of opportunity. So, I think when we trust our people within our organizations, when we offer them the imperative of building better services for our own communities, most people will rise to the challenge in spectacular ways.
Thank you very much to everybody, Wayne, Michael, Jamie. I appreciate your time with us. Great conversation. I'm sure there'll be some questions that will come up in the town hall from this. So thank you, and over to you, Naheed.
Wow, Steve and the panel, thank you so much for those great ideas and great insights. I think that we're going to take all of that information back, digest it, and hopefully share it with our colleagues and see if we can't implement these ideas ourselves somewhere along the way. Thank you very much to the panel, and please join us at the town hall this afternoon. Looking forward to seeing you. Take care.
Thank you for the great discussion. Well, you'll see Naheed again at the town hall. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving into the last theme of the event before the all-important town hall, where you'll be able to have your say. So I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, Glenn Kotick. Glenn is the City of Winnipeg's Acting Director of Innovation and Technology Services and has been a big supporter of this initiative since day one. Well, how are you today, Glenn?
I am doing wonderful. It's a little chilly in Winnipeg, but I'm pleased to be here virtually.
Yeah, that's great. And again, thank you for all your help. You've been totally amazing. So Glenn, you pointed us to the virtual policing piece we showed earlier, and we heard from your mayor about the importance of innovation, and he was wonderful. Do you think there's something special Winnipeg understands that isn't resonating in other parts of the country?
I think a key element, Fawn, is that our elected officials, and especially through our mayor's office, have really looked at where we're going as an organization, as a city, and how we need to respond to the needs of the citizens. We're very fortunate to be on a very significant growth trajectory with our population in Winnipeg. And we've come to the realization that doing things the same old way will not allow us to meet the needs of the future. So I think that's the key awareness that we have in Winnipeg that might be a little bit different than some other centers.
Interesting. Well, we're going to talk about partnership and how public sector organizations can maximize available dollars if they think outside the box, internally and externally, to break down silos. So, Glenn?
Okay, thank you so much, Fawn. So I'd like to thank IT World Canada for the opportunity to share some thoughts with the attendees today on the topic of partnerships. In the municipal context, partnership can mean so many things. We have partnership with our key vendors and suppliers, which is what many of you might first think of. Partnerships with other municipalities and other levels of government. That's something that's rapidly gaining importance, especially in these very difficult times we're all facing. And then we have partnerships with academia, nonprofits, and interest groups that are vital to our success as a society. And finally, and in my mind, most importantly, we have our partnerships with the citizens, our residents who we serve and who have entrusted their elected officials to chart a course to prosperity and fulfill our vision and mission. At the City of Winnipeg, our stated vision is to be a vibrant and healthy city, which places its highest priority on quality of life for all its citizens. And our mission is working together to achieve affordable, responsive, and innovative public service. You may have noticed that a key element of the mission is working together, because achieving our mission and vision is only possible through meaningful and effective partnerships. Partnerships with all the entities I just mentioned. In my view, partnerships fundamentally come down to relationships, common understanding, and common purpose. These relationships have never been more important than now, as we all work through the rapidly evolving challenges associated with the pandemic. I remember last March, I happened to be at a conference, yes, an actual physical conference with real people in a real room together, a little bit hard to imagine today. And at that conference, I was with other city leaders from across the globe. And that conference was happening just as COVID concerns were starting to rapidly escalate. Again, it was early March. And it was so impressive to see the collaboration that began immediately at the conference as we all started sharing the plans, strategies, and approaches being taken across our various organizations to respond to the pandemic. And this was hugely valuable as we had insights shared from Asia, Europe, and North America, a tremendous advantage when dealing with such a global challenge. When I returned to Winnipeg and went through the mandated self-isolation from my trip, the public sector collaboration continued at the local level as all my public sector peers freely shared information and resources as a collective organization scrambled to deal with the demands brought on by the pandemic response. I vividly remember my team working through the weekend as we prepared for the citywide implementation of the new collaboration and video conferencing solutions, and how we were in constant contact with the other public sector organizations, each sharing their plans, training materials, and technical testing results to support each other. We simply would not have been able to achieve what we did with the massive shift to remote work and new collaboration capabilities without the benefit of those long-standing partnerships. Those relationships which are stronger than ever, having worked together successfully through those very difficult times. As Fawn mentioned, municipalities are always looking for ways to stretch their dollars as far as possible in service to the citizens. Doing more with less is a never-ending mantra. One way to accomplish this is through group buying partnerships with other municipalities and other levels of government. And this has become fairly common practice. We have been actively pursuing this within Manitoba to great financial and business advantage. But to be successful in this, it requires the partnership between the various government entities to reach new levels of commitment and common understanding. But our track record shows it is absolutely achievable and well worth the effort, something I am sure many of the attendees today would agree with. It's important to note that the benefits from these collaborative procurements extend not just to those entities performing the procurement, but also the proponents within the procurement as well. I'm sure we have all heard from the vendor community how difficult, resource-intensive, and downright expensive it is to effectively respond to formal procurement requests. When public sector agencies work together on collaborative procurements, it standardizes the business requirements and allows proponents to respond to a single procurement request rather than dozens, greatly reducing the effort and expense for all involved. For the successful proponent, the collaborative procurement results in a much larger business opportunity with standardized delivery terms, leading to much simpler contract and relationship management, a win-win for everyone involved, including the citizens. At the City of Winnipeg, as we strive for innovation in public service, we are actively seeking out new ways to build partnerships with the private sector to meet our business needs in a faster and more dynamic fashion. Before the event, I was speaking with some of the IT world staff about how in some circles, procurement is often viewed as the innovation killer. While despite some of these negative views, it does not have to be that way. The path forward, again, is partnerships. Within our innovation program, we have worked extensively with our procurement team to have them understand how quickly we need innovation projects to run, how we need to engage with a wide range of potential suppliers, and how we perform very rapid benefit-focused trials with those vendors' offerings, pivoting approaches based on the trial results, perhaps on even a weekly basis. And these vendors often are willing to engage with us at little to no cost in these trials. This speed and flexibility are very new ways of engaging with vendors compared to our typical procurement processes. But when we took the time to explain and discuss what we needed to achieve our innovation goals within the program, our procurement team worked with us to define new process guardrails for the innovation program to proceed quickly and effectively while still managing the risk for the city. This was all possible because of our trusted partnership with procurement. We did not try working against them or around them. We worked with them to find a path forward. Again, relationships, the foundation of partnerships. We are now building on this innovation procurement success by developing new relationships with companies within our tech startup and incubator community. This is possible by leveraging the relationships we have with the support entities within that ecosystem, such as North Forge and Tech Manitoba. Each of you will have similar support entities in your jurisdictions. We have let those organizations know that we are ready, willing, and eager to work with the many exciting new tech companies that are being formed. We've even gone to the point that we are developing workshops to help those companies better understand how they can engage with public sector organizations for all of our mutual benefit. As the City of Winnipeg has business needs that come out of our innovation program, we want to be able to quickly engage our extensive tech ecosystem within Winnipeg to leverage the solutions that exist or see if those companies can develop the needed capability. Because if the City of Winnipeg has a need for that capability, it is very likely there's an extensive market opportunity elsewhere as well. Every success we have in building these new partnerships helps other companies understand that we are not your grandfather's procurement process any longer. We are truly dedicated to work with industry to drive a smarter, more effective, and more efficient public service for the citizens. In the panel that's coming up, you will hear some great insights on how to approach partnerships to maximize the value for all parties. Going into the panel discussion, I would encourage you all to consider what partnerships you value the most and why. For many of you, I expect it will be those partnerships where trust has been built and where communication is clear and effective. If that is the case, how do you view your role in those existing high-value partnerships? And how do you view your role in the new partnerships that must be formed that are going to be critical to your future success? How can you build that trust? How can you get to true understanding of each other's needs? And what do you bring to the relationship for the betterment of all? Fawn, thank you so much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts on the very vital topic of partnership, and I look forward to hearing the insights from the panel. Thank you.
To hear how the panel is going to discuss these points that you brought up. That was great. Really appreciate it. Well, before we hear from the next side, the next panel, let's watch the third video in Leading the Charge series. This AI-fueled example deals with the fight all governments across Canada wage: potholes. Let's see how one BC town is choosing to use technology to be a frontline player in the seasonal battle.
Keeping roads in tip-top shape is hard. Just ask Devon Arrow, Public Works Manager at the City of Dawson Creek. Not that long ago, the small town in BC was one of the hundreds of Canadian municipalities simply struggling to count the number of potholes dotting its roads. Before teaming up with Visual Defense to test a new solution, Arrow says the situation was bleak. After he entered into the Public Works Department following a lengthy tenure as the town's water treatment plant manager, there was no baseline to work from, making his job that much more difficult. The status quo had to be broken. Enter Visual Defense. The Richmond Hill-based software startup had been making noise across Canada for over a year with its smartphone-based artificial intelligence system that detects potholes more efficiently and at less cost. There are no expensive sensors involved. That's music to the public sector's ears. Arrow quickly reached out for more information.
So prior to implementing Visual Defense's technology, we just knew our roads were really bad. And that's the general consensus from council. It would come in waves and we'd hit it really hard and then the roads would be good for a little while. But now that we have the technology, we've used it to do multiple surveys. And so we can actually put a numerical number on the number of potholes we have in town. And we can put a severity rating to them. We can start to strategically look at them and say, okay, you do these ones, I do these ones. Too often what we do is I would show up as an engineering person with my paving crew at thousands of dollars an hour, and the public works guys would be there putting rock in the holes that I was supposed to be paving. So now we can be a little more efficient, and we can create just way more optimizations.
Visual Defense's Chief Technology Officer, Roy Tal, says he's heard similar stories from public works departments across Canada. When asked how the startup has been able to build relationships across the country so quickly, Tal was quick to praise the smartphone.
Stuff that when I was a kid, James Bond was the only person that would have a smartphone, but now everybody's a James Bond, right? And when you take these devices that have the best cameras, the best sensors, the best screens, pretty much everything in there, and you load it with the best software, you get basically the best bang for your buck for this sensor. It is a sensor at the end.
Software used by the township in open spaces will always draw the attention of local residents. Anyone concerned about accidentally getting picked up by a sensor can rest assured that any personal information, faces, and license plates, for example, are redacted automatically right on the phone. The only images that are ever reviewed are of the potholes. Tal is adamant that the only way to help municipal road crews innovate and stay ahead of the curve is to essentially throw technology at them and encourage them to use it.
There's a lot of fear in the government about taking risks, right? Like, why rock the boat? We've been fixing potholes the same way for the last 20 years. Why come and disrupt things up? And I think we as society rely on people like Devon and on his team as well, right? Because for Devon, he needs to have the ability to do what he's doing, including support from his management, support from the staff, the people that actually use the device. So I think that it's great that organizations like his basically go out there and discuss publicly the fact that they're evaluating this technology, that they're trying it, that they're collaborating.
Municipalities interested in trying out Rover can do so through a free pilot. That's music to Arrow's ears.
So the idea is to, especially in this age of, the fiscal gap, sustainability, we have a lot of financial crunches, be able to create efficiencies and show that, we're improving and improve our processes because it's an iterative process. Every one of our programs, whether it's fire hydrants or street lights or pothole patching, I need to be able to show that we're getting better.
Can you imagine if there were more governments using this technology to proactively locate potholes before they became a problem? I mean, what would Canadians have to talk about every spring? Okay, it's now over to Samantha Licio, the 2020 CIO of the Year, who will guide our panel of experts through a discussion of partnerships. including what works, what doesn't, and how people across various jurisdictions are working together to avoid recreating the wheel. Over to you, Sam.
Good afternoon and welcome to our panel on partnerships. It's my privilege to act as your moderator today. My name is Samantha Lucio. And by way of introduction, I was honored to be awarded the CIO of the Year in the public sector category for 2020. And I think a large part of that success was due to understanding the importance of partnerships, which is what we're here to talk about today. We'll be discussing the importance of partnerships as they exist in Western Canada and where they can provide that acceleration potential for achieving business outcomes, and where they can drive efficiencies and where they can enable innovation. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Barb Carra, the President and CEO of Cybera, Roy Tal, the CTO of Visual Defense, Justin Rutley, the Director of Customer Success at Munisite, and Darren Young, who's both the CIO of the City of Delta in British Columbia and the President of MISA BC. So if I can ask each of you to give our audience a quick introduction of who you are and what your role is, starting with you, Barb.
Thank you for the introduction, Samantha. You speak to partnerships, and Cybera, by definition, as a not-for-profit or member-driven organization in the province of Alberta, we really are strongly reliant on our partnerships with the members that we serve. And so from an organization perspective, I have the pleasure and privilege of working really closely with our 26 post-secondary institutions in Alberta, as well as a small handful of our K-12 school districts, our provincial government, municipalities across our province, and other not-for-profit sector partners, because really everything that we do from that technology level in terms of enabling access to the digital environment really does revolve around partnerships. So completely agree with those opening remarks.
So my name is Roy Tal. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Visual Defense, and it's a real pleasure to be here with so many interesting people that have a lot of interesting things to discuss, I'm sure. And for us, I think one of the things that I'm really excited to talk about today is the partnership that we've had with over 50 organizations across Canada, something that we've managed to put together in less than 1 year. And I really look forward to share this and also to see from our other panelists what they have to say about partnerships and collaboration today.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin Rutley. I'm the Director of Customer Success for Munisite. So I help our approximately 500 municipalities across Western Canada connect and simplify their municipal information to make data-informed decisions. So I'm really excited to talk about partnerships and how we work with vendors, nonprofits, governments to help that information flow throughout municipalities in Western Canada.
So Darren Young, I'm the President of MISA BC. My day job is the CIO at the City of Delta. I'm really excited to be here today. I've had and seen the power that partnership can deliver in terms of delivering services to residents, and I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation.
Well, thank you so much, panelists. So let's jump right in. Even pre-pandemic, we were in a world, I think you'll agree, where data is growing at an explosive rate, where cyber attacks are forcing organizations to spend extraordinarily to protect data. And infrastructure is often outdated within weeks of its release, and really no organization can do it all. So what are some of the ways municipalities are partnering to get the best outcomes and the best bang for their buck? And maybe if I can start with you, Barb.
What we've been doing from a provincial perspective is building a platform of collaboration around cybersecurity. And this involves shared opportunities around process, people, and technology. And in some cases, we're looking to opportunities to reduce costs and create efficiencies by setting up shared cybersecurity tools and opportunities like a shared security event information management system, for example. Because we can start monitoring traffic and threats over the network, we can do this in a shared environment where by looking at what's happening, we can share that information back to the sector for them to make their own decisions with. And so we're looking at ways of doing cybersecurity in better, cheaper, faster ways where those partners are actually part of the solution.
So Darren, in the municipal environment, what would you say are some of those opportunities?
Partnerships are important to all of us, but I think they're also exceedingly important to smaller municipalities that have neither the resources nor the people to cover all the bases. In BC, we certainly look to other levels of government internally for support in the cyber world. We have very close relationships with the provincial government. And we also we have a presence on a number of national boards and are involved with public safety. As well as, of course, our Municipal IT Association, which is the association of which I'm president. Our goal really is about sharing knowledge, providing education, and networking.
So, Roy, what are some of the ways that you're seeing that municipalities, government entities, the broader sector are partnering to get that bang for the buck?
We've really dealt this year and basically collaborated with governments ranging from small towns with less than 3,000 people to some really, really large cities. So you can really see a big variety in terms of the approach that is taking place to information security. And one thing that I think is a really powerful tool that doesn't require a lot of work for municipalities to implement is a cloud review process. So what we've seen through, especially now that there's a lot of platforms that are SaaS-based, meaning that the vendor hosts all of the infrastructure off the government premises and the government can access it. What we found is that some of the larger cities have really robust cloud review questionnaires that allows the municipalities to quantify the risk that's associated to work with certain vendors.
What ways are governments and agencies and institutions partnering amongst themselves, specifically to do more with less? Because I think, especially during COVID, we're being asked to constrain budgets, but actually to deal with more than before. So maybe, Darren, if I can start with you, what ways are you seeing partnerships happening where we can be able to get better outcomes for less investment?
Right. I mean, certainly, I think it falls into two categories in the municipal space. Group buys and sharing work product. Several years ago, 25 cities in British Columbia worked together to do basically a replacement of a parks and recreation management system, really an enterprise-grade product. The work involved, if you could imagine, hundreds of people doing requirements engineering together to figure out the requirements of a new system, and then going through the design and execution of a group buy process with a tendering framework. At the end of the day, of course, huge savings. We probably save 50% off the annual subscription cost of the product.
I'm going to take here maybe also a different approach that I've seen worked in our case, and I think it's also being more and more common, which is partnering with the private sector on joint R&D projects, on demonstration projects, on things like this. And really, when you partner with the private sector and you say, hey, I'm willing to be a trial partner for you, I'm willing to invest time in trying this and seeing how it works for me. What I get out of this as a municipality or as a government organization is I get to be educated basically for free about this technology or technology like your technology. It doesn't mean that they have to buy it from you. And also it allows them to basically start to assess and plan better.
Justin, how are you seeing that partnering happening across governments, municipalities?
We focus really on being a trusted advisor. So when we make that different shift, people are willing to be more open to saying, okay, we're 5 municipalities in a beta, and we all would like these things. These are nice to haves, but let's focus on the use case. And when you focus on the use case, everyone in that group, it allows them to change that mental shift to go, oh, we're actually all trying to do the same thing. This allows us to tailor a product that does work for everybody. And it also is something that's more out of the box.
We've been in pandemic response mode for almost a year now. How has the remote posture made it easier to partner across the country or across the world? Or is it making things more difficult? I'd be interested in your perspectives related to that.
Now with remote working, everybody knows in the rural municipalities how to use Microsoft Teams at the very minimum. It comes with their Microsoft package. So when we can have more people talk to them. So someone that maybe is a tax expert or a agricultural field person, they can now quickly talk to somebody that's on the support team and go, do you know what, if you change this one little thing, this would make my life so much easier.
That whole notion of accessibility to experts is something that you don't hear very often when we talk about working remotely.
One other thing that's really interesting, it's allowed us to put our guards down, especially in the municipal space. When my dog's running across, or I see someone that's been very formal, like a CAO, they're very formal, they manage a lot of things, and all of a sudden their kids start yelling and jump on it. It breaks down that relationship barrier, and they'll give you some real feedback.
Barb, how are you seeing that remote posture make a difference?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I agree with Roy and Justin's points, but I also have to say it's also harder for a lot of people. And this is where I'll speak to my organization in terms of its networking expertise and our advocacy around the concepts of and issues around connectivity. And we're still seeing actually, and I'd almost say that that digital barrier, that digital divide is growing, because when you do move everything online and you do go to remote delivery of education and services, all of a sudden those people who aren't able to connect anymore really are at a disadvantage, and that disadvantage only becomes heightened because of the current situation.
One other part on the barrier, I was speaking earlier on the call that, in the city here tonight, we're having a fairly large public hearing, and it's entirely virtual. So if you take a look at that from a demographic perspective, I think it tends more towards seniors in our community aren't familiar with this type of technology, and it's been a real learning curve from them. And it's, in some ways, it's made democracy and government farther away than it should be. Now, these are trying times, and we'll get through this, but it is certainly a limitation of technology.
Yeah, so when we talk to either a client or another vendor or a nonprofit, what we're looking at, we look for really three key things. So I call it, are they providing actual value? And how do I break down actual value? I think of relationships. So number one, what are they doing in the community? Do they have strong relationships? Are they a trusted advisor? What do they do? The second one, I think about is utilization. Are people actually using what they're doing? Is it providing some sort of value that way around utilization? And then the last one, which I think is really important, is business. Are they doing the right thing? There's a book called The Go-Giver that I really, really recommend to everyone. And the basis of it is, if you do the right thing, business will follow. So that's kind of our mentality, is when someone calls for a quick question, we're always there to answer it. We're not going to go back and bill it. That's something that's really scary for a lot of people. So how do you do business? Are you doing it ethically? Are you hiring local people in the municipalities? Are you looking at First Nations and how it's going to affect them? Are you building something that's going to work for rural municipalities all the way up to someone a little bit bigger? So the business, those are the three type of things that we look for when we do a partnership.
And so you're trying it, you're testing it, you're validating it, you're iterating and building that relationship as you go through that process.
Our goal for any partnership that we do, even when we have a client, we call it a 5-year journey. If you're not going to be with us for 3 to 5 years, it's not the right partnership for you. That's when you start seeing that realization of the value and getting it embedded within your municipality.
So Roy, from the perspective of a vendor, how do you find partners that are going to, have those key features in the partnership that excite you and excite your business, and how do you make that determination?
So I'm going to say that the key thing that I think for any partnerships is just good communication channels. And if you keep in good communication with your partners and they keep good communications with you, you can understand their perspective, where they're coming from, what is it that they're looking, and what it is that you're providing. And that really helps you to build expertise and address those special use cases that come out of it.
It really does come down to those relationships. In terms of what I look for in good partners, be innovative, bring something different to the table and think differently. So a lot of what we do, we don't do a solution for a single member. It has to benefit the group, right? And so you have to think about changing the delivery model a little bit. And that's what I like to challenge people to think sometimes differently, is that, can we do this not just for one, but can we do it for many?
So a final question to wrap up. And if I can ask you this, to frame this as kind of your tagline, what's the one partnership tip or idea that everyone here today can take away and act upon, that they can jot down on the back of a napkin as they're sitting sipping their tea and take away with them to be able to act upon tomorrow? Justin, if I can start with you.
So something that I focus on a lot, if you're looking to go and get a new vendor for software or a solution, is 3 really key things that I kind of focus on and tell people, hey, it doesn't matter who you go with, you should probably ask these three key things. Number one, I always like to ask is, who owns the data? The municipality should own the data. If you go and you partner with someone, you want to make sure that that data is getting to the right place. Number 2 is, where is the data stored? So the information, if it is on premise, is it your server? Do you have the people in place that are able to secure that server? If not, if it's going to the cloud, where is your provider storing that data? Is it in Canada? That's a big thing. Is it in Canada or is it going to the United States? Are you comfortable with that? The last thing is, where is it developed? Is it developed in Canada by developers in Canada, or is the provider outsourcing? This is really key because if you're outsourcing, lots of your data might go with it when they're building a beta. They're going to need some sort of data, some sort of feedback, and some sort of access to your environment to be able to build this. So are they doing that in-house in Canada, or are they outsourcing that? That's really key. If you can ask those questions when you're in your department meeting looking to buy a vendor, those are some questions you can ask that get some really good alignment, and it'll be much easier for you to purchase and when you're looking to make a partnership with your next vendor.
Great. I think that's a real tactical checklist that folks can go through. Thank you. Barb, your one partnership tip or idea that everybody can take away from today.
I would say, come to the table with a clear set of expectations and what success is going to look like. How are you really contributing to the people you're serving or providing a solution to?
And be clear about that. Excellent. Yeah. Roy, from your perspective, your partnership tip or idea that everyone can take away.
I'm going to say that partnerships and collaboration are no different than any relationship between people, right? So I'm going to say that the same rule that would apply to relationship with people, which is to be flexible and open-minded when you're having discussions with them, is really what I think should be applied in any discussion that you're having with different organizations. So that would be my big suggestion for everybody.
Thank you very much. And to wrap it up, Darren, your one partnership tip to take away.
I think my takeaway would be that, following on Roy's comments, relationships are everything. Build them and you'll be successful.
Excellent. So alignment, communication, flexibility, and relationships. A big thank you to our panelists, to Dr. Barb Carra, to Roy Tal, Justin Rutley, Darren Young, and thank you to all our participants and indeed our partners in Technicity West. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. That was great. Well, I'm sure there are members of the audience who have other stories about partnerships that have both worked and failed. Why not tell us what you've learned from them at the town hall? But we have a few more things to do before we get to that. So we are now going to hear from Surrey, BC Mayor Doug McCullum. Mayor McCullum shares his thoughts on how technology has changed the citizen experience, even in smaller communities. Take it away, Your Worship.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here for the Western Canada Technology Conference. It is no secret that COVID-19 pandemic has created a sudden and significant surge in demand for digital services. Guided by our Smart City strategy, the city was well equipped to accelerate Surrey's digital transformation. Innovation has always been a cornerstone of Surrey's growth, and this past year has been no exception. When public health orders asked people to stay home, the city was able to pivot quickly by ramping up our online services to residents and businesses. Our city staff were given remote access tools to continue services safely. And because Surrey stays current with emerging technology platforms, meetings easily transition online while ensuring residents could continue to participate as they would have previously with in-person council meetings. We know that our residents' expectations have risen to new heights as a result of private businesses like Amazon investing heavily in digital experience, pushing all sectors, including government, to continually innovate. Responding to these heightened expectations, we push forward with the launch of our city website during the pandemic. With many enhanced features, the new website is a one-stop shop for residents, providing vital information and services. Focusing on our customer-driven experience, this new site has been built with a consultation of over 1,400 internal and external stakeholders. And during COVID-19, the website has proven to be a highly valued source of information, providing reliable access to services for residents and businesses. When it comes to innovation, Surrey's economic development staff launched the award-winning Surrey Makes PPE program to support local production of PPE. The program connects local manufacturers with the information and resources they need to retool their facilities to produce essential medical and protective equipment to tackle COVID-19. This has allowed many of Surrey's existing manufacturers to continue operating and to retain staff despite the negative economic impacts of the pandemic. The program has supported over 25 organizations and generated over 11 million in PPE sales. In addition, the city launched an online permit application process in response to the pandemic, creating a more convenient, transparent, and streamlined process for customers while further cutting wait times. The flexibility of applying online proved to be convenient for businesses, with 35% of trade permits being initiated outside of regular business hours. Despite being in the midst of a pandemic, there is clearly confidence in Surrey as a prime destination for new businesses and residents. In 2020, the city recorded a $1.46 billion in building permit value, surpassing our 10-year average. When it comes to transportation, electric vehicles are just one of the multiple technologies that were unheard of 20 years ago, but now are exploding in terms of popularity. Electric vehicles offer the potential to eliminate the single greatest source of GHG emissions in our community. Surrey recognized this early on, and our EV strategy is a perfect example of how we are tackling this major issue with the Government of Canada and the province. Last month, we announced the doubling of our public Level 2 charging networks in Surrey. The joint funding by all three levels of government will result in 40 electric vehicle charging stations at 10 public sites across Surrey. The Surrey Clean EV Charging Network program is an example of how Surrey has taken action to be a leader in environmental sustainability. As we look ahead, there is massive potential to build on this partnership approach. The bottom line is, we are stronger together and we are only getting started. I want to thank the organizers of today's event for the opportunity to share with you what we are doing in Surrey, and I hope it will be of use as we all strive to reach new heights in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor McCullum. Well, in just a minute, I'm going to speak with Calgary's wildly popular mayor, Naheed Nenshi. But right now, we're going to see the final episode in our Leading the Charge series. This one focuses on an Edmonton company that is using specialized data harvesting techniques to give governments around the globe access to the best information possible in a crisis. Please roll the video.
Edmonton-based startup Samdesk is no stranger to emergencies. In fact, informing people about global emergencies at lightning speed is at the core of the startup's identity. Now, Samdesk finds itself in the middle of a 24/7 emergency as waves of COVID-19 infection spread globally. Its CEO and founder, James Neufeld, says the firm has been forced to grow to keep up with the global demand for its services.
We are in the real-time crisis response game, so we've been able to step in across many different clients, helping them solve supply chain issues. When do people need a lockdown? When can they safely open? There's so many, real-time decisions that need to be made to keep people safe.
In the case of the University of Alberta, keeping students safe on campus is one thing. Keeping students traveling abroad for their studies safe is another.
The University of Alberta has had to take a lot of steps to alter their operations, and students being abroad is absolutely one of those. A lot of our aviation clients, a lot of our travel and security, risk clients have been adversely impacted by COVID. People aren't traveling, and a lot of ways that we helped the University of Alberta was through travel. So a lot of that is now forward-looking to when this will reopen, when our students and faculty going to be traveling again.
Municipalities have enough to worry about, so it's understandable that planning for and budgeting for future emergencies is often an overlooked process. But Neufeld says the past year has shown why local governments need to have a plan for their rainy day fund. Get comfortable with constant innovation and pilots, and apply that thinking to your emergency response plan. There's a good chance it's outdated anyway. Samdesk's roots are tied to the journalism industry, thanks to the big splash it made in newsrooms. Getting info on world events almost instantly proved to be an obvious benefit for the media and emergency response teams. Samdesk ingests 1.3 billion data points a day from public social media and web sources. This helps teams get an accurate view of what is happening and take action hours before traditional media breaks the news. Looking to its future, Neufeld says its goal is to further contextualize data coming in, so users can better understand the potential trickle-down impacts of an emergency event.
We're continually impressed at how much hard work goes in behind the scenes with all of our public sector clients, but generally really struggle with connecting the dots. Does this have an impact for my constituents? Does this have an impact for my citizens or my initiatives? Maybe that wasn't a known, in the first 2-3 minutes, but it might actually take 3 months, 6 months, a long time downstream to actually understand that, oh, we did actually have a member of our community there. I didn't know. And one of the events that comes to mind, one of the most tragic for us here in Edmonton, especially the U of A, was the downing of the aircraft in Iran, right? It had a huge impact to our community because of how many members of our community were sadly on that aircraft. So again, it's a global event that has a huge impact locally, connecting those dots so that we can have a better response. So it's not just, always about the numbers, not always just about kind of, the immediate understanding of impacts, but trying to understand the larger impact, the long-term impact. That's really where our mind's at, and hopefully that we can be a part of that and help bring communities together and work, help municipalities work not just harder, but smarter around making a safer, more connected community for us all.
Fantastic stuff. And speaking of fantastic, we are joined by Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us live today. I mean, like every politician out there today, you certainly have your hands full.
Yeah, it's pretty darn busy, and we're very back to back. But thanks to the miracle of technology, we can spend some time together. I'm going to tell everyone a little secret, Fawn. We're gonna drop the curtain a little bit, which is right now as I'm looking at you, you are standing in a hugely cool looking science fiction green room. And hey, despite everything that COVID has taken away from us, at least we can now get together electronically with people from across the West here. And given the weather in the West right now, man, I'd rather be sitting indoors talking to all of you than traveling, and I'm thrilled everyone's here.
Well, thank you so much. Well, in a year-end interview, you admitted that 2020 was not a good year for the economy. So you suggested one way forward was the use of technology to strengthen core industries. You said they would need to digitize in a way that they had never envisioned, but public sector organizations are also digitizing and leaning into technology for efficiency and to improve the citizen experience. Can you share a few thoughts on the challenges and opportunities for the public sector to embrace technology, to innovate, enable, and push towards enhanced digital government?
Absolutely, and thanks for that lead up, because I think this is a critical question, and I know that many of you have been addressing exactly this. Even before COVID, we estimated that legacy industries here in Calgary would be spending in the order of $18 billion in the next couple of years on digitization. And certainly governments have been looking to do that as well. And COVID has really highlighted that for us in many ways. So I'll go off for a little bit now, if that's all right with you, Fawn, and talk a little bit about some of the things that we have done with all of this. But I just want to remind everyone of how quickly we found ourselves where we are. I see I'm glitching a little bit. I apologize for that. One of the problems with working from home is you don't need to see my messy bedroom. But let's think back about what this year has been. When I was doing those year-end interviews in 2019, they really were about recovering a fragile economic recovery in an unclear global market, but ultimately very, very optimistic. And certainly none of us expected what happened in 2020. When I started 2020, like many of you, I know that it was going to be a year full of stuff. And for me in particular, a year full of travel. I was planning on spending most of the year on the road selling Calgary. In the first 8 weeks of 2020, I stayed in 7 different hotels in 7 different cities. And then suddenly I didn't anymore. I stayed in my 8th hotel in Edmonton in November, and that's it for 2020. And suddenly we had to find new ways of doing things. We had to find new ways of digitization. We had to find new ways of managing the world in which we find ourselves. And that hasn't been easy for everyone. But at the same time, I think that there are real opportunities. So let's just remember how quickly this happened. At the end of February last year, I was on a trade mission to India. My first time I'd ever been to India. And it was going great. We were encouraging lots of companies to come to Calgary. And I was thinking to myself, it's too bad that that I have to come back so quickly, because I'm the first tourist in the history of India in their first visit to India to never see the Taj Mahal. But I had to be back because I had to be in Houston the next day for a big energy conference called CERAWeek. And while I was in India, CERAWeek got canceled. It was the first big international conference to get canceled. And I thought to myself, hey, I got a couple days to kill. I should stay in India and see the Taj Mahal. And of course, what happened is they had to close the Taj Mahal a day or two later. This came on us very quickly. And so I arrived back home in Calgary on a Sunday. On Monday, I gave a press conference saying, folks, this virus, we might want to be a little concerned about it. And in particular, we probably want to stop shaking hands. And I still remember the joke I made. I said, I've just been in India. So from now on in Calgary, instead of shaking hands, we say namaste. That was Monday. Wednesday, indoor gatherings were banned. Wednesday night, the NBA canceled its season. You may remember that, as a game was beginning. Thursday, the NHL canceled its season. By the weekend, we had declared the second ever state of emergency in the long history of Calgary. In 135 years, we've had 3 states of emergency declared. Lucky me, I got to be the mayor for all 3 of them. But that said, we had a real problem as an organization. We're a very large employer, and I know you've heard from my wonderful CIO, Jan Bradley, as part of all of this, but what Jan and her team did was really remarkable. We have about 15,000 employees at the city. Many of them work in the field, but many of them work at desk jobs as well. And we went from Friday, having never heard of Microsoft Teams, to Monday, deploying full remote access for some 8,000 employees. And by Wednesday, we were simultaneously running tens of thousands of hours of video conferencing on Microsoft Teams. And our IT department, Jan and her team, were able to do that. And that was a remarkable thing. When I did my first press conference from our Emergency Operations Center, we realized that the technology we were using to live broadcast was a little bit outdated. And we weren't sure how we were going to do virtual press conferences. And of course, we got all of that up and running really, really quickly. But that's very internal. What's more important about this, I think, is how we provide citizen services. We've been digitizing those for a very, very long time here. I've been mayor now for over 10 years, and my first project when I became mayor was a project called Cut Red Tape. And part of that had to do with using new technology to make life easier for people. So we were the first city in Canada, for example, to make the entire process of small business permitting completely online. We've saved millions of hours for our customers, as well as a lot of difficulty in the work that they do. But COVID made us accelerate a lot of that. You know, the 311 app, which has been an important part of how we communicate with citizens, suddenly became very, very popular because we had to make service adjustments all the time. We were changing the hours or closing facilities, libraries, rec centers, and so on. We had to change our transit system almost in real time to respond to what was happening. And we had this tool that we could use to share information. And we also hit a major milestone, by the way, in the adoption of technology in Calgary Transit this year. So Calgary Transit has lagged behind many other places in the adoption of smart card technology. You still buy paper tickets and get paper transfers. But in one way, we were very lucky because our smart card projects kept kind of fizzling out as they've done in many places. And as you may know, in Ontario, the launch of their transit smart card project cost in the billions of dollars. Quite frankly, I'd rather have more train tracks for $1 billion than a smart card system. We were very lucky because technology leapfrogged us. And so we went, instead of developing a smart card system, we went directly to a mobile-based payment system. So in July of 2020, we launched an app called MyFare. And MyFare allows individuals to buy their passes and tickets using their phone. And while this has a ton of benefits, period, it was really important during the pandemic because it minimized contact. My notes say it reduced driver-to-rider interactions. That's not quite right. The drivers and the riders are still interacting, but you're not physically handing over a paper ticket or a transfer. It can be contactless. There's less physical currency trading hands, which was extremely useful to reduce surface transmission. But it also meant people had one less trip they had to do. They didn't have to go to the store to buy their transit passes, which I thought was very helpful. I know Mayor Bowman has spoken to you today, and he talks about the use of the app Waze in our traffic management center. We're doing that as well, but we're going further than that. Our goal, even before COVID, was to use the city as a living lab, to use the city's resources to help startups figure out how they can grow and scale. So some examples of this is we've got a bunch of empty land around a landfill that, frankly, given the economic conditions, is not going to develop anytime soon. So we were able to turn that into Canada's first urban drone testing facility. So we have drone companies from all over the world coming to use that land to figure out new technology on drones. We were able to implement an autonomous shuttle, a driverless shuttle that carried passengers between two of our major tourist attractions, the Calgary Zoo and the Telespark Science Center, which are adjacent to one another. NASA, Lockheed Martin, others have shown interest in this. We've also been able to use technology to help our local businesses. So for example, we have a great app, Park Plus, which helps us manage our parking. It is for sale for any other cities who are interested in adopting it. But what we were able to do when the restrictions came in and we went to curbside pickup is very quickly create waivers for local restaurants and businesses so they could have free parking in front of their business for 15 minutes for people to do curbside pickup. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't had the technology of the app. I'm just going to jump. I know we're getting a little late on time, so I'm just going to jump to important work around supports for vulnerable Calgarians. For the last 3 years, I've made a focus of much of my work being mental health. And we will soon be announcing Canada's first community-based action plan on mental health and addictions, which I hope other cities across the country will adopt. But before we did that, we also adopted a fast pilot process. We called it Change Can't Wait. And we gave nonprofits and private sector organizations, there was $1 million in funding to just try things during COVID, try things and see if they worked. Community partners added to that funding pot. And I'm pleased to announce that we were able to launch 31 pilot projects immediately, many of which use technology to figure out how to help people with mental health and addictions crisis as they're working. So I'll give you a couple quick examples. One is called Community Connect YYC. It's a one-stop shop for mental health and addictions tools launched by Calgary Catholic Family Service with funding from Change Can't Wait. They partnered initially with 4 other organizations just to offer online bookings for mental health and addiction services. But this became a much huger thing. So there's now 16 services all in one place. The number of partners involved has doubled, and people are continuing to work through that. Very important stuff. And sometimes that technology takes a human touch. We've been creating anti-poverty and mental health hubs throughout our community. And one of those hubs is located in every community library, because libraries are full of brilliant, well-educated people who know how to access information. So having the librarians and others in the community has helped us create a system of community wellness desks. And so the idea there, starting with our downtown library, is that if you're having a mental health crisis and you're near a library, just go there and they'll help you. And they've got access to the technology that is needed in order to help. Finally, I'll just mention we have a new program called 9 Block Ambassadors, looking at the 9 blocks around City Hall, which have become a nexus for social disorder. These are individuals who just help people. They walk around, they talk to people, they help with tourists when we have tourists again, but they also help with people who are homeless or in addictions crisis or mental health crisis. And data is a really critical part of that. There is an incredible amount of mobile data where they have the ability to track the person, to help them and to use them. And they've had over 1,700 tracked interactions with people in crisis, 900 of which were people experiencing homelessness. And they made 300 referrals to social services. So this stuff really matters. And, you know, sometimes it's easy for those of us who get excited about technology to think about technology for the sake of technology. But ultimately, what makes it work well here in the context of government is how we can use technology to make people's lives better. We have a very simple vision at the City of Calgary, that is making life better every day. And if technology can help people to live a better life, a life of dignity and opportunity and prosperity in our communities, then we use technology for its ultimate goal. And that's something we need to keep working on. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for your interest in this. Thank you for spending your day with us on this kind of work, because it matters. And ultimately, it makes a huge difference in people's lives. So thank you all for being change makers and for making life better every day.
Mayor, thank you very much. Very inspiring. Congratulations on all your innovative successes. And I just want you to know that IT World Canada is going to take these stories and come up with an ebook so that we can share all your successes and innovation across the country. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Bye. Well, that was great. To move into the part of the program where you get to have your say, the town hall. Click the link on the messenger or the button on the platform below, and we'll all go into the town hall on the Ring Central platform, where Rob Miko is waiting for us. Rob is a nationally sought-after speaker and consultant with senior level experience with a number of public and private sector organizations. Rob will lead an open discussion on what we've heard today with the goal of creating a roadmap document for the next phase of digital government innovation at the provincial or municipal level. So we're hoping that a lot of you may want to speak, but because there could be more than 100 of us in the same room, we'll ask for your patience. So you're going to enter the Ring Central room from your browser and automatically be muted. In order to indicate you have something to say, type your question in the chat. Then, much like a live event, our team will run a virtual mic to you. Then they'll unmute you. At that point, we ask you to turn on your video and identify yourself. Then you'll have the floor. We know everyone has a lot to say, so please keep your comments or questions brief and on point so we can get to as many people as possible. Click on the button appearing in the messenger momentarily, and we'll see you inside.